The following is a KIII-TV3 presentation. Spahn Hospital is proud to sponsor the Kathryn Childers Special, an exclusive interview with Walter Cronkite, preceding his Corpus Christi visit for the Spahn Hospital South Texas Lyceum, benefiting the new radiation therapy center at Spahn Hospital.
It's not very often that you see Kathryn Childers or TV3 in New York, but a very special man is coming to South Texas, Walter Cronkite, for the South Texas Lyceum sponsored by Spahn Hospital, and it's sold out. But Mr. Cronkite agreed for me to come to New York and visit with him in his office about his viewpoint on history, and we thought it appropriate, since he is a Texan and coming to South Texas, that we preview that visit. And when you think about it, he's an incredible man to talk history with. He was there at Normandy. He was there during the Kennedy assassination. He was there during World War II and Vietnam. In fact, he was there just about everywhere that was important in my lifetime. And the following interview was a very important one for me. In fact, probably one of the biggest. And I hope you'll enjoy the next 30 minutes, as this Kathryn Childers Special is devoted to a man who simply has been called the most trusted man in America, Walter Cronkite. Hope you'll stay with us. CBS headquarters at the corner of 52nd and the Avenue of the Americas in the heart of Manhattan. We met Walter Cronkite in his office on the 24th floor, a comfortable space filled with memorabilia, reflecting moments in the career of a man who steered many of us through probably the most fascinating period in the history of the earth. This picture, a gift from Walt Disney Productions, says it all. Even Mickey Mouse shed a tear on March the 6th, 1981, when Walter Cronkite retired from his CBS anchor post. Emmy Awards are a tribute to the success. Reference books and books of facts, lots of them, remain as important as they always were. Join me now as we look back with the man who reported it as it was, Walter Cronkite. We thought it would be interesting for folks to know that your roots are deep in Texas. San Jacinto High School, Houston, Texas.
Right, University of Texas.
A man named Colonel Van Kennedy, who we all know so well in Corpus Christi. I understand now, it may not have been your first job, but gave you one of your earlier jobs, is that true?
Gave me my first important job, I'd say. He did indeed. He was running the International News Service Bureau in Austin. Had a little tiny office way up in the rafters of the Capitol building. That was partly because he wanted a little more room than he would have gotten with a desk in the general press room. So we operated out of there, and he was a superb mentor. Gave me all my best first instruction. I was a student at the University of Texas at the time, and it was a very important break for me to get that job. I wanted to be a reporter at the time. I was about 12 years old, I think. I read in American Boy magazine, they had a series of short stories which glamorized various careers, trying to give some career guidance, I suppose, to the young readers of the magazine. And the one that hit me was being a correspondent, a foreign correspondent. So I never looked back. The only other thing I thought I might like was mining engineering, but I gave that up when I couldn't pass first year physics at the University of Texas. I figured if you can't figure out how a pulley works, you shouldn't go down a mine.
Probably not. But then left Texas, and as the career developed, really, Europe, in the European theater. Were you on the beaches of Normandy during the landing?
No, I was overhead in the landing in Normandy. I was in an airplane, 303rd Bomb Division. We made a couple of runs over the target that day. I didn't go actually go ashore until D+4.
Do you remember that day, your feelings that day?
Oh, yes. Those will live with one forever, I suppose. It was very dramatic. I was not supposed to be there on D-Day at all. I'd been assigned by the United Press to write the story back at the Bureau, to take whatever information we got from our correspondents who were going ashore and to write the lead story. But the night before, in fact, very early on the morning of the landings, when we didn't know yet that the landing was taking place, you understand the correspondents who were back in London didn't know any more than the people in the streets knew. It was a highly kept secret. And but that morning, at 1 o'clock in the morning, a public relations officer for the Air Force, for whom I was accredited to fly, and had been flying with the B-17s and the other planes, appeared at my door, my apartment door. He was a guy who played a lot of poker with, played around with in London, an old friend. And when he ever appeared at my door that hour of the morning, he was usually loaded. And this day he was very sober and in his full uniform, which wasn't always the case. And he looked around the apartment before he talked to me. He came in and said, "Can I come in?" I said, "Well, of course." I was in my pajamas. He looked around the 3 or 4 rooms of the apartment and opened the closet door. And I said, "What in the world are you doing?" Hal Lyshon was his name. And Hal said, "I just want to be sure nobody else is here." I said, "Well, I would tell you if anybody here. What's going on?" He said, "Well, I tell you, we've got a mission, highly dangerous, and we put the press service names in a hat. You and Glad Hill and Bill Wade, who are my competition with AP and INS respectively, for one of you to go as a pool, and you got the draw. And I can't tell you any more about it than that, but I can tell you it'll only take a few hours, and you've got to come with me now, and that's all I can tell you about it right now." So after we left and got in the car, I of course agreed. Well, it turned out it was D-Day, the landing in Normandy, and they had called on extra air support at the last minute. And this was a heavy bomb division going in at medium height, which had never been done before. And did I want to go? Well, of course I wanted to go, so I went and had the first look at the beach, got back to the office, and actually I would have had probably the first look at the beach, except the communications were good from the beachhead, better than anybody expected. And we actually had gotten the first story back from the beach before I ever had my story, looking at it from several hundred feet. So my story hardly ever got into anybody's papers, I don't think. And when I got back to the office, although I got back within 2 or 3 hours of the landings, my office was furious. They thought I'd been out on the town somewhere instead of home, and they tried to get me to get into the office to write these stories. And when I explained where I'd been, they still were a little bit upset.
There's a very good reason why Spahn's Cancer Services offer the most advanced cancer diagnosis in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best. There's a very good reason why Spahn's Cancer Services offer the most advanced cancer treatment in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best.
The Kathryn Childers Special will continue in a moment.
There's a very good reason why the Spahn Heart Center offers the most advanced cardiac diagnosis in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best. There's a very good reason why the Spahn Heart Center offers the most advanced cardiac treatment in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best.
After World War II, you became a bureau chief in Moscow, and it'd be interesting for me, and I think for our viewers, to hear your comments from those times, because you were there, and the times now when we see, for instance, Mikhail Gorbachev receiving an honorary doctorate from the University of Alaska, which for me I think it must be unbelievable.
Well, of course,
for you.
46, when we first got to Moscow, the wartime honeymoon allegedly was still on. But if that was a honeymoon, I must say it was obviously a marriage that was not made in heaven, because the Russians were very bitter about us, very not angry. They were they were defensive, as they have been for all those Stalin years, and very secretive, very hard to be a newspaper person there at those days. We weren't permitted to see any Soviet officials, any. Couldn't even see the Foreign Office spokesman. We could only get an appointment with him by letter, and then it was by telephone usually. Saw him only once or twice in 2 years. We only saw Stalin at the opening of the Supreme Soviet session, and I saw him once at the ballet.
How did you live? You were a young man, probably a starving bureau chief, I imagine, at those times. And was it quite a humble existence?
Oh, it was terrible. We didn't have any food really to go around either. We got a partial ration from the State Department, the embassy, and we did get preferred rations in the stores. But we had powdered milk and powdered eggs and very little fresh meat, very few fresh vegetables. We were hungry, really, along with the rest of the Russians who were really hungry. We had better housing, fortunately, but not much better. We lived in an apartment building that the United Press had for many years there and had held on to, fortunately. So we had rather decent housing. We were fortunate also in that the flue from the central heating plant was broken in the wall of our bedroom, so our bedroom wall was warm.
And that was
the only warm room in the house. Like one of the only warm rooms in the American colony. We used to entertain in our bedrooms, and we'd have cocktail parties in our bedroom because it was warm. The people were very suspicious. It was a very difficult time, and I never believed that the situation would be reached in my lifetime that we see today. I still don't know how far it's really going to go or how successful Gorbachev is going to be. I'm hopeful. I always thought that the change would come in the Soviet Union only after they had lifted themselves economically by their own bootstraps and could afford to lower the Iron Curtain and let their people see the outside world. To have it come in this fashion with a revolutionary leader like Gorbachev, I didn't anticipate at all. And of course the collapse of the Iron Curtain in the middle Europe, I did not foresee it at all either.
What surprised you most of all the things that have happened in the last months, I mean the last couple of years, with all the changes, particularly in Europe?
Well, I suppose the Gorbachev leadership itself is what is most surprising. I suppose once that process started, some people might have predicted developments coming eventually as they have come now. I don't think anybody anticipated the events of last fall in which the wall came down and Hungary, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Poland fell.
What really precipitated the fall of the Iron Curtain?
I think television had a lot to do with it. It was, first of all, the relaxation in Moscow. That was the key to everything. Gorbachev's relaxation there, which indicated that, and statements he made, which indicated that he did not intend to use the Soviet army to hold these people within the Soviet orbit any longer. That gave them the ability to do what they did. Then the television inspired them. The first inspiration coming really when they saw by television that carried over across the Iron Curtain. They could not stop it, even by jamming. By satellite and other means, they were seeing Western European television, and they saw what life was like in Western Europe. And this created the discontent which led to the eventual collapse of those governments. That's the first order of business. Poland, of course, led the way, Poland being a very special case. But Poland, by being a special case and leading the way, Gorbachev letting Poland get by with it was the inspiration then for the rest of them to move.
As we're speaking of leaders, let's go back a bit. You interviewed John Kennedy on September 2nd, 1963, just months before his assassination. Could you tell me about that interview and any premonition of that time? Certainly not of the assassination, but maybe observations of him. Was he a personal friend?
Yes, to a degree, but not to the degree that he was with some other correspondents in the Washington group.
He liked the press, didn't he?
He liked some members of the press. He didn't like all members of the press. As a matter of fact, he did not react very well to criticism in the press at all. As a matter of fact, he banned the New York Herald Tribune at one time from the White House, which was pretty petulant, I think, of a president, particularly when it's a very important newspaper at the time. He challenged CBS to chastise me a couple of times during the political campaign by which he was elected president. He refused to appear on a program that I was doing of interviewing the candidates. Nixon agreed to go on the program, and it forced him to go on the program with me. But he didn't like that at all, to be put in that position. No, his relationship with the press was not all roses at all.
There's a very good reason why the Spahn Heart Center offers the most advanced cardiac diagnosis in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best. There's a very good reason why the Spahn Heart Center offers the most advanced cardiac treatment in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best.
The Kathryn Childers Special will continue in a moment.
There's a very good reason why Spahn's Cancer Services offer the most advanced cancer diagnosis in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best. There's a very good reason why Spahn's Cancer Services offer the most advanced cancer treatment in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best.
Do you remember that moment when they called you? I mean, we will all remember. That will be a moment in my life when Walter Cronkite told the nation that the president was dead. Did Dan Rather call you personally?
Well, we were going back and forth to him. He was on the air out of Dallas.
Oh, I see. But those were days before all the communication slick systems that we have.
Well,
I mean, it was
it wasn't that long ago.
Well, I suppose,
We
but
were
I mean, it was a
beyond the
black and
crystal
white.
set at that
Yes,
point.
yes, but it was.
We had plenty of remotes there. We had Dan at one point. We had Eddie Barker at another point. We were switching around with no problem. But we went to Dan back and forth, and now came the official word, which fell to me to announce. And I read the bulletin. The bulletin came, and I said, "Here is the official bulletin. President Kennedy passed away at 11:01 or 1:01 or whatever the time was." And as I did, my voice broke and had a tear in my eye, I guess. But I was able to carry on.
I thought it was interesting they referred to you as the American security blanket, the man who could. They even referred to you as an old shoe. I mean, in the sense that you were Walter Cronkite. If we made it through the night, and at the end of all the pain that we were going through in those days, you could say, and that's the way it is, it's somehow that it would be okay. Were there other moments that you remember that were as touching as that on a positive note? Was it the man landing on the moon?
Oh, without a doubt.
Could you recreate that moment for me? Very few people have been that close to the space.
Well, that moment was interesting. I had Wally Schirra, Mercury Gemini astronaut, at my elbow, and I'd had just as long to prepare for that landing as NASA had. I'd been following the space program from the beginning, way back in the 50s when they were shooting little rockets up from Cape Canaveral. And I'd had all that time to prepare. And yet when they stepped foot on the moon, when Armstrong touched the moon, when they said Eagle has landed, and then when he said Eagle landed, I guess, I'd had all this time to get something ready. And I found myself absolutely speechless. I just couldn't believe it, you know. And I think my immortal remark was, "Oh boy."
If you'd had to make a choice between being an astronaut with the potential of being that first man on the moon, or being the man that they coined the term anchor for, if you'd had to make that choice, which would you have chosen?
I think I probably would have chosen the career I've had. I would certainly it would have been a wonderful, wonderful experience to have been the first man on the moon, to have gone through the astronaut training, to be capable of being the first man on the moon. That would have been a marvelous thing. But on the other hand, it's kind of unidimensional in a way. And I've had a great opportunity in these 73 years to observe probably the most fascinating period in man's history on Earth. So I don't think I would trade that.
The report you filed following your visit to Vietnam and the Tet Offensive, did it precipitate LBJ's resignation?
Oh, I think it may have been a contributing factor. Things were falling apart for him about that time, and I'm sure it contributed something to it. Bill Moyers, who was the president's aide at that time, said that when he heard the broadcast, he said, well, if we lost Cronkite, we've lost Middle America. And I think it probably had something to do with that.
Are you glad you made that divergent from the middle-of-the-road position?
Absolutely, absolutely. We calculated the danger of doing it at CBS. It was a very unusual thing to do. But I went there to Vietnam at the Tet Offensive time for the purpose of doing a personal assessment of the war. I had been for the war in the beginning, in a sense. I mean, not publicly and on the broadcast, but I think it might have been generally interpreted that was my position. I had lost my enchantment with it as we took over the war and pushed the Vietnamese aside, really, and were running it with an ever-increasing number of American troops and involvement, and with a lack of involvement of the people at home, which was the main thing. We didn't ever make it put the United States on a war basis, which was vastly unfair.
Was that the biggest mistake, perhaps?
It was the mistake. And then we got ourselves totally bogged down out there. So I went out with that intention, with the understanding, part of CBS President Dick Salant, a very courageous man, that we should go out, and I should come back and tell personally how I felt. The American public was vastly confused over the issue at the moment, and that's what we did. And my conclusion was that we had fought an honorable war. We'd gone out with an honorable purpose of trying to preserve a corner of Southeast Asia for democracy, which did not exist at the time out there, but we had to give it a chance, and we did what we could. We'd found we could not impose our way on the Vietnamese, and that we ought to negotiate and get out.
Did you choose to editorialize Watergate?
No, because we didn't do the same thing with Watergate. We didn't make an editorial judgment on Watergate at all.
But in the fact of presenting an extended series of segments.
Well, we did that. The decision we made on Watergate was purely a journalistic and not an editorial one. It was that Watergate had begun in June, I think it was, and had been so episodic in little bits and pieces of the story. It dropped one day, and the Post would have something one day, the Washington Post, and Woodward and Bernstein, and then there'd be a piece in the New York Times, and then AP would get a piece, and then CBS get a little piece. There wasn't any cohesion to this story, and actually it was losing its impact. It was not even being printed around the rest of the country. And somebody needed to pull that all together and say, let's go back and take a look now. Here's what Watergate's about, A, B, C, D. By doing that, we had a tremendous impact. Kay Graham, the publisher of the Washington Post, said we really saved the day, that they were running out of steam themselves and taking a lot of criticism from the White House and from Capitol Hill, and they were just about to give up on it. And the election was just a couple of weeks around the corner. And it was an important journalistic job to do. I'm very proud of what we did.
There's a very good reason why Spahn's Cancer Services offer the most advanced cancer diagnosis in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best. There's a very good reason why Spawn's Cancer Services offer the most advanced cancer treatment in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best.
The Kathryn Childers Special will continue in a moment.
There's a very good reason why the Spawn Heart Center offers the most advanced cardiac diagnosis in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best. There's a very good reason why the Spawn Heart Center offers the most advanced cardiac treatment in South Texas. You're the reason we give our very best.
Had you been an advisor to President Nixon, how would you have told him to handle it?
Total candor.
Had he done that, would it not have been an issue?
Nothing would have happened. You look back at all the scandals in the United States, in our political area, in the last 20 years, and I'd probably go back to 200 years, it's never the initial sin, it's the cover-up.
Okay, now, what would a real New Yorker have?
Okay, mustard, onion, saffron.
Everything?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Mustard.
All right.
New York way. Okay.
This is the real one.
Yeah.
Well, what does a South Texas reporter do after she's had the interview of her life? She has a hot dog on the corner of 6th and the Avenue of the Americas, and where are we, 52nd Street?
52nd Street.
Let's see. It was worth it. I can come home now. See you next week.
Spawn Hospital has been pleased to sponsor the Kathryn Childers Special and bring you this exclusive interview with Walter Cronkite, preceding his visit to Corpus Christi for the Spawn Hospital South Texas Lyceum, benefiting the new Radiation Therapy Center at Spawn Hospital. Kathryn's travel to New York, courtesy of American Airlines, something special in the air.
Next month, we were the only cameras there shooting Ultra Magazine's Texas Mayor's Economic Summit. 5 women mayors and 1 man. Times they are a-changing. For the better, we hope. Join us next month when Henry Cisneros and the mayors speak on the bad times and the good.
If you could use your influence to get something done which needs to be done today, I think it probably ought to be done right in Washington. We ought to do something about our finances. Everything's hanging on that now. We've got a great backlog of social issues which need to be taken care of. Education, crime, drugs. We've got infrastructure economically that is falling apart. Highways, bridges, roads. We've got this great national deficit. We've got an opportunity to save a great deal of money in our defense structure. We've got to find out how to channel that money and do it properly. And we probably need to raise some taxes. And I think we need some courage to get those things done on the part of our legislators and on the part of the administration.